Chairman, you ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Campbell, for being here.
So, board members, your superintendent, your staff worked on answers to these questions and the issues that have been raised in reviewing things, and they reviewed each of these with me over the telephone. We went through the questions and the information to make sure that things were accurate so that you would have full information to review. And throughout the process of the public records requests that the board has been receiving, your staff, as needed, has also consulted with me in my office on these issues as well. At the outset, I want to say that public records requests are no big deal. Public records requests are part of the job. As this board knows, my law firm is full-time legal counsel for 19 school boards, and we work with over 30, almost 40 across the state as needed. And public records requests are a legitimate part of the job. They serve a very important purpose so that members of the public can have access to financial information, have access to policies and other decisions that public boards make. So from that standpoint, I can assure this board that at no time has responding to public records requests been an issue for your superintendent or your administration. They've taken a very business-like approach, as you would want them to do, in responding to these. I will say, and I will repeat, that it has taken a substantial amount of your staff's time to respond to these things. And again, that's okay. If there are legitimate concerns that the public has, and those legitimate concerns should be met. But when there are concerns that are not necessarily identified, I think it's just important to remember that that staff time and energy is not being spent on curriculum. It's not being spent on facilities. It's not being spent on school safety. So there is a price to be paid when the administration has to spend time working on requests, and it's not necessary for a member of the public to ever identify why they are requesting public records or what specific information they're looking for. But I don't think you need a law degree to know it's very helpful for a public official, and we've got some other public officials here tonight. It's very helpful to know what the questions or concerns might be, because then you can provide better information. You can provide information more quickly. So that's always something that I think is a request that can be made to folks, is if they can identify what they're concerned about, then this board and this administration can actually get them the information a lot quicker. Those are just some introductory comments. Let's look at the specific information, because I know you have other business to attend to this evening. So on the first slide, questions about how Ms. Carrie Green was paid. The factual information is her base salary in 23-24 was $39,840. She, like other employees, received the local supplement of 3%, which came out to $1,195.20. The administration consulted with the State Department of Public Instruction on her job duties and her job position in which she should be paid according to those schedules, and in November of 2023, her salary was adjusted for consultation with the state. The next slide is the COVID relief funds, a very complicated subject because of the numerous sources of COVID relief funds that this school board and all school boards across the state of North Carolina, if not our nation, received during the pandemic. $10,626,141 is the total amount of all COVID relief funds from all sources that have been received by the Avery County Schools since March of 2020. All COVID funds include, first of all, coronavirus relief funds, which was called CRF. Then the state of North Carolina did a fiscal recovery fund, followed by a state COVID-19 supplemental fund, then followed by the ESSER funds that everyone has heard about, ESSER 1, 2, and 3. And then ESSER 1, 2, and 3 was followed up by a governor's emergency education relief fund, or GEER. So multiple sources of revenues came to this school board, just like other school boards across the state. And if you add all of the funds that were related to COVID, you get the $10.6 million figure. If you just look at ESSER, because ESSER is a term of art. ESSER means something. ESSER means ESSER 1, 2, and 3. It doesn't mean those other funds. Then the amount is $8.3 million. That's what this district has received through ESSER. Each PRC, which is a reporting code, it's a program report code. This is how DPI sends money to school districts And this is how DPI, the State Department of Public Instruction, gives restrictions to school districts and tells the superintendent and tells the finance officer how the money can be spent. And each PRC for COVID release funds has had a different expiration date. So as funds come in, they have to be spent by different dates. So it's a moving target, and you have to look at each specific fund to be able to understand it. And the ESSER funds are currently the only COVID relief funds that remain unexpended in total. So all the other funds I mentioned, you have expended those monies. There's some of the ESSER money that is still remaining. For ESSER 2 and 3 balances, it depends on the timing of when information is pulled. If a citizen wants to see how much of that money you've spent, like most things with state government, if you come to your website, it's current, and you can see exactly how much has been spent. If you go to the state website, they're about 2 months behind. And that's not a criticism. The state of North Carolina is taking information from all the school districts, all 115 school districts across the state, charter schools as well, and then they're posting that information. So they're about 2 months behind. So those numbers are not going to match up if you look at both of those. Flip the page. Yes, there were some new personnel hired by you and every other client we represent using COVID funds, because you needed to address learning loss, you needed to address social and emotional problems, and in fact, that's what the state and federal government wanted you to spend the money on. They wanted you to spend the money on learning loss and other issues that were directly related to COVID. This school district went through a federal monitoring review for selected COVID funds, which means the feds took a look at how you were spending the money, and all requirements were met, and my understanding is there were no findings whatsoever related to how this district was spending COVID funds. Again, very typical, very business-wise. This next statute is important as far as budgets and proposed budgets. The state statute requires public school units to submit their budget proposals for the upcoming fiscal year on or before May 15th. Well, if anyone's been paying attention the last number of years, there's not a state budget in June, much less July, much less September, October, even November. So projections are being made of how much money will come in from the state government. The feds are on a September to September fiscal year. So a lot of the federal money is actually dispersed to school districts in September, October. So when your staff is putting together a budget in May for the coming year, it is completely a projection. It's a little better than throwing a dart at a dartboard, but they're very good at making the projections. They get projections from the state, but it's just that, it's a projection. Most years' data is not available from the state. That's a typo regarding salary and benefit increases at the time you have to do your budget. You won't know what that's going to be. And all school districts use the best information available to forecast salary and benefit increases. Your district leadership has said to this board on numerous occasions that you do not have enough total funding from all your state and federal local resources to provide pay raises for all employees beyond what is mandated by the state each year. And I want to stop right there because I don't know that many people understand what the board does, that when the state gives a pay raise for state-funded employees, the state pays them. But you, thanks to the gratitude, thanks to the graciousness of your county commissioners, you have enough money to actually hire local people with local funds to do things for students. Well, the state does not provide any money for those raises, but you legally have to give those employees the same raises. So when you hear on the radio or on the television that there's been a 4% increase or a 7% increase in state funding for school employees, this local school board, thanks to the county commission, has to find that money to actually provide those employees with those same exact raises without any additional money from the state. A lot of times, this board has to look at fund balance to do that. Fund balance is the savings account. Fund balance is the money that's put away if you're lucky enough at the end of the year to not have expended all the money on all the line items. That is one-time money. No school board I know of, no county I know of, no governmental entity I know of tries to give across-the-board pay increases with fund balance money, with savings account money. It's one-time money. So it is not sustainable to say that a finite pot of money can be used to sustain salaries over time. I think that's a basic proposition, but you've been using that pot of money in order to meet these salary increases. Moreover, a substantial portion of the Fund 8 balance is restricted monies. This is a real important point. You have two local funds that you keep track of, Fund 2 which is the money from your county commissioners, and Fund 8, which is restricted money. So that's money given to you by the federal government for certain purposes. Those are reimbursements you might receive. Those can be grants, restricted monies for a specific purpose. You have to track that money in Fund 8. That's not free money. And that fund balance, the majority of it is restricted because the money coming in is restricted. So if you save a little bit of it, it's still restricted. So a lot of what you have in fund balance is being reported out is restricted money. Also, when it comes to your total local current money, Fund 8 and Fund 2 are reported together in your audit. So they're reported together, even though they are two separate sources of fund. That's just an accounting mechanism that's employed by your auditors. That's how they choose to do it, is to report it as one fund. Prior to 22-23, you had not received additional money for salaries, but you did receive $70,000 from the county back in 2021, but my understanding is that was restricted to pre-K salaries and pre-K employment expenses. Local fund balance has been used to offset salary and benefit increases over the years. Again, it's one-time money, can't be used to sustain ongoing salary increases. Flip the page. On this particular slide, it was taking several information from different sources as part of the public records response, so it's a cut and paste from several different documents, or at least more than one document. State funds were not reverted back to the state by this board, except as below. First of all, dollar positions and months of employment are allotted by the state using an average. However, they only give you the amount necessary to cover salaries, so averages don't matter. Let me explain that, okay? The state tells you how much to pay a teacher with certain years of experience, okay? The state gives you that exact amount of money. So if the teacher is brand new, you're going to get that salary figure for that brand new teacher. If the teacher has 25 years experience, the state's going to give you that exact amount of money to pay that teacher. So as far as you're concerned, averages don't matter. School districts are going to be below the state average or above the state average based on what? How many young teachers they have versus how many more experienced teachers they have. That's simple math of how you end up. That's how you get an average. Some are below and some are above. But for your purposes, you're not looking at averages because you're hiring real people to teach real students. And the state is giving you that money on a salary schedule. And if you hire them locally, same thing. You have to pay them a certain amount of money on the salary schedule. So the state wants to keep track of averages, certainly. And the state wants to see where school districts are with averages. But averages really don't fit into what you're doing when you're hiring flesh and blood people to work with students. All school districts must stay within the positions and months allotted. In other words, like for assistant principals, you're given so many months of employment, and that's it. And you can use those months to hire one assistant principal, and Ms. Aldridge, you can use those months to hire 3 assistant principals. But what are you going to have to do to pay those principals when you go over the number of months? It's going to have to come from local funds. So the state says these are the months you get. If you go over that, either through employment months or through numbers of people, you have to pay for that yourself. You did revert in one area, and this was not uncommon around the state of school districts. You had to give back 1.5 positions worth of money for a school psychologist position because the state said you can only spend that money on a school psychologist. They identified, remember that program reporting code? They said this is money that can only be spent on a school psychologist. You, like other clients we represent, couldn't find a school psychologist. The labor shortage in our country is real. It is affecting all employers, and it's especially affecting school districts in hard-to-fill positions and professional positions like school psychologists. You literally couldn't find anyone. So the state said, I'm sorry, but you didn't find an employee to hire, so now you have to return that money. So that was the only money that was reverted. Other pots of money, including textbooks, technology funds, etc., those don't get reverted. That balance does carry forward. While anticipating the release of the state budget, this school district released a percentage of local instructional supply money. So while you were waiting on the budget, you did release money for supplies on 2 different occasions, 20% in August, 10% in September, in an effort to get school started. And here are the final supply allocations that were made after the state budget was passed. So this is the supply and funding money given to your schools after the budget was passed. A high school, 38.3 million, and L, excuse me, thousand. I wish it was 38. I'm reading too fast. Reading too fast. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yes, absolutely. All right, I'll slow down, my apologies. Again, I know folks have places to be this evening. $38,000 for the high school, just over $9,000, almost $10,000 for Baker Elk, $11,700 for Cranberry Middle, $10,800 for Crossmore, $13,800 for Avery Middle, $12,100 for Freedom Trail, $11,300 for Newland Elementary, and $5,500 for Riverside Elementary. So those are the
Chris, could I just ask a quick, as far as when we're addressing these, just for information for the people who are here to know why we're addressing, I mean, the question that we're actually addressing there. I don't know if that would be helpful or not to people, so they'll know what we're.
Yeah, and again, I think that the questions, and that's why we wanted to hand this out, because the questions are actually listed on the slides. So what we thought would be the best use of everyone's time tonight is just to provide the answers. And I'm going to say this in a few minutes, but this is a good time to say it now. The question doesn't really matter. If the questions are asked of the school administration and this board, then you can provide factual information. And that's what this shows, is that if there is a misunderstanding or a question of how things work, there is usually a direct answer. But you have to be asked that question for you to be able to respond to it. So I don't mean this in a cynical way whatsoever, but the question doesn't matter unless it's posed to you. And then it does matter because you can get factual information at that time. But the questions are here for folks to take home and see for themselves. The next slide talks about the superintendent's contract. The superintendent's contract, every bit of compensation received by the superintendent is public record. The actual contracts are public record. The actions of this board are public record. The amendments are public record. So anyone at any time who wants to see exactly what the superintendent's being paid, how he's being paid, is welcome to see that, to look at board minutes. Hannah can assist with that if they want to see board minutes or other things, but all of it is public record. The history is here, and I won't belabor the point because it's very straightforward, but basically the current funding for your superintendent, 85.5% of those dollars come from state funds, 14% comes from local funds. The salary started off with the superintendent at $135,000. That included available state funding for longevity and doctoral degree for Dr. Brigman. He did not at that particular time receive the 3% supplement. But then there were successive amendments as this board looked at increasing the compensation and rewarding the superintendent for the job he was doing in his administration. By amendment effective January the 1st of 20, the board agreed to pay the family health coverage for the superintendent. That is a way to compensate the superintendent that did not increase his retirement benefits in In amendment effective on July 1st of 20, the board agreed to extend the contract, but didn't increase compensation at all. Then in December of 20, the board agreed to provide the superintendent with a 3% supplement as additional compensation. So again, that was additional compensation from the board to the superintendent. By amendment in July of 22, 2 years later, the board agreed to increase the base salary of the superintendent by $13,000. And then recently, the board decided to retroactively pay the superintendent the allotment for his longevity to make that consistent with other employees. Again, that's additional compensation. It is W-2 wages, it is reportable to the IRS, and it's in the contract, will be in contract amendment. That was board action to make that adjustment. So the superintendent's salary is all public record, therefore I don't need to go through the additional slides. And I'll move to the slide that talks about a request to the commission. And I'm going to spend a little time on this slide because I think it's very important to walk back through the board and to remind the public what that relationship is between the county commission and the school board. Well, first of all, per general statutes in North Carolina, the Board of Education is an independent, co-equal branch of local government with the county. It is not a county department or an agency, and the roles of the county commission and the school board in the budget process are clearly set by general statute. Your county has been wonderful to work with, and I want to thank you while some of the commissioners and the county manager are here. I've got a great relationship with the county attorney. These folks helped us through with the construction issues that we all know that we had at the high school, and the nightmare of the process that was, given COVID and supply impacts, and frankly, the job that we felt that the contractor was doing or not doing, Mr. Superintendent, but they were wonderful working through that. It is an essential relationship. And this board is well aware that you have one mission, and that is to educate children. The county, on the other hand, has multiple obligations. They not only have to take care of you, they have to take care of fire and rescue, sanitation, they have to take care of public health, public mental health. They have so many obligations on them that the statute set it up very directly. You are to decide what the needs are for current expense and capital funding, and then present those needs to your county commissioners. They then look at them, they do their due diligence, and they decide what level to fund those needs at. So that is the relationship at its heart between a school board and a county commission. And I'll stop and say at this point, throughout this process of all the public records requests, without any information from any source of knowing if there were specific concerns, I have been in contact with the county attorney, and I have assured her from the beginning that if there were any questions or concerns about any expenditures by the school board, to please let me know, and I would do my responsibility ethically and my fiduciary responsibility as an attorney, officer of the court, and in helping this board to answer those questions. And to date, there have been none. So I'm happy to report to the board that at no time has the county attorney called me with any specific concerns regarding any of the funding that this board has done. I think that's great. So based on everything that covered tonight, the information provided by your administration, there really is no further action that is required or necessary by your county commissioners with regard to all of these issues which have now been answered. All of the issues have direct explanations that none of the questions were posed to this board so that you could have answered them. Allegations of wrongdoing require facts and will always be investigated by this board. I'm proud to say that I have worked with this board for well over 10 years now, and anytime there has been an allegation of wrongdoing, the direction from you board members and prior board members has been to fully investigate it and get down to the bottom of the facts. And if there's wrongdoing, to root out that wrongdoing, and if there were misapplications or if there were mistakes made, to own up to those mistakes. But nothing so far that has specific facts of specific wrongdoing. Making assertions or implications of financial mismanagement, misappropriation, or even deception by school employees or this board without first getting the facts and, more importantly, the answers is irresponsible and does ultimately harm the school district. The time and effort and expense that you spent on this process when you need to be focusing on kids and the education of kids. This administration and you board members have responded to 12 separate public records requests. You've produced 20,000 pages of documents over the past 6 months. You've responded to the assertions that were made, and again, that required extensive time from your administration and legal expense. Any evidence of wrongdoing will be fully investigated, but there has been evidence of any wrongdoing put forward. The remaining slides, I think, was just kind of pointing to the finance officer has very specific duties, which she takes very seriously. All of those duties, to my knowledge, have been carried out. The next slide is that the way you do your budget is like every school board does their budget. You have budget resolutions, and occasionally you have to amend your budget. Every month you can have budget amendments, just like the county does the same process. In fact, at the end of the year, both of you have multiple budget amendments, so that you're reconciling all of your accounts to be able to have a final budget. That's something the school board wants to do, that's something the county wants to do before there is an audit. So all of that is very straightforward. The next slide, again, pointing out certain fund balances. Not sure if there was a question with this, but the $1.8 million in general fund includes what I spoke about earlier. That's not only the money from the county commissioners, that's the restricted funds, the Fund A. Those are the two that are co-mingled. For fiscal year 2021 and 21-22, several bonuses were paid as mandated by the state and funded with COVID relief funds. So you did get money from the state that was to be given to employees in relation to COVID issues, and you did that. You are in compliance with annual independent audits, and you have filed your audits with the local government commission, with the NCDPI, and any other required entities, and your audits are available certainly on your website if anyone ever has a question about any of those. As far as your nepotism, I will say this in all seriousness, not tongue in cheek, but educators fall in love with each other. and educators get married. It is very common with all of our clients that there are married couples that are in the school district. And nepotism also becomes a question and an issue for folks to deal with in smaller communities, where you do not have necessarily a huge pool of applicants for different jobs. So that is why there is a law on school employees and nepotism, is because of that issue. The General Assembly has recognized that a superintendent's spouse can be employed by the Board of Education. That's a specific law for school districts. Because even folks in Raleigh recognize that educators fall in love. And if the spouse of the superintendent is qualified to work in the school district, that can be a benefit to the school district. And that was an issue statewide years ago, and the legislature actually allowed that. As far as I know, as your attorney, you are in full compliance with the law and public policies on that as far as employment of those folks. You knew that there was a family relationship issue there at the time folks were hired. As far as supervision, as the law requires, as your policy requires, no immediate family members are being directly supervised by their family member. They're being directly supervised by someone else. And that the board superintendent and director of human resources can consistently recuse themselves from participating in any employment matters directly related to immediate family members in that respect. And then the final slide related to something in the minutes that was not correct in Lawrence County, and I believe that's in Georgia.
Lawrence County, Georgia.
Lawrence County, Georgia. And for my purposes, the superintendent wants to add anything, but as board attorney and you board members, I don't know of any intentional misrepresentation in minutes. If there are any mistakes in minutes, be happy to correct those. That, again, is a very common thing. We try to get minutes 100% right, but I will tell you on occasion, clients of mine and other governmental entities in North Carolina and across the United States of America have had to amend their minutes if they had something omitted or something that was inaccurate. But I know of nothing in your minutes that is inaccurate. And certainly if anyone does or wants to point that out, we will deal with it and get that corrected.
That was minutes from another state, actually, not even.
Yeah, and how many years ago?
I guess 6 years ago. There's a beautiful middle school on that property right now, and it was purchased for a premium, less than $1 million, has water and sewer on it for future growth, and it was a great investment for those kids down in Lawrence County. We also built a brand new high school on the east side of Lawrence County. We bought 80 acres for less than $500,000, so we're very proud of those accomplishments down there.
We don't know of any current problems or issues with any of your minutes whatsoever. So I'm going to repeat the two good things I said earlier. First of all, your county commissioners have been wonderful to you. They've been wonderful to work with, and the county attorney as well. And certainly if they, as a group, ever have concerns, I'm sure you will, and I will do everything in my power to investigate it and rectify things if something's been done inappropriately. But I would, just for the sake of the public, say that if anyone does have specific concerns or issues they feel that should be investigated, having facts is what will allow the school board to actually investigate it. And please do give the administration the opportunity to respond and answer any questions you might have, because it might save everybody a lot of time. That's all, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy